When I was little, my hair is the way it is because I just wash it and I put a little gel in it, and for the 50 miles it takes to drive here, I go like this. And that's all I really do. But I have curly, natural body in my hair. Thankfully, it's a gift from my mom. But when I was little, so I'd come out of my room and my hair would be all over the place, and I would hear them say, "Well, good morning, Gravel Gertie." And I didn't know what that was until a long time later. It was actually a character that they had grown up with. It was just a playful thing. But sometimes it's that look that you get from somebody, or someone says something to you that you know are kind of teasing you instead of necessarily being straightforward with you. It's taken a bit for my girls to figure out when I'm teasing and when I'm not. I had said something to Michaela on the way down in this afternoon about tomorrow being Annika's birthday, and she said, "Oh, I forgot." And I said, "Well, can't you remember the day she was born?" And then she said, "No." I said, "Well, of course not. I don't either." But, I mean, we tease each other all the time, and we are playful with each other. But one of the things that I remember growing up is always knowing when you're getting the look from your parent. Remember those looks? You don't need to practice them or share them or anything like that, because you who are parents know that you were able to control your kids' behavior with the look. And my girls know the look. It's a little different on Sunday morning, but they can still get the look in church. You might not know that they're getting the look, but they know when they're getting the look. Well, I got the look from Annika in particular when she first came. She was 3.5, and she came speaking Russian, and I was up to 60 words, and she was learning English quickly. But I would get the look of contempt from this little body. She would just look at me, and it was just like if she could kill me, she would. But she didn't want to. It was just kind of how she expressed herself in those early days of transition. She didn't have, everything was new, and this lady who could not really talk to her kept dragging her through airports, putting her on airplanes, and making her meet lots of people, and I would get this look. And it's been fun to have that look change to not sneers from a teenager, but usually, just the playful fun that we typically have in our house. We like to tease each other, we like to have fun, we like to laugh. But those looks, the looks we give to one another, can say a lot. It can. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's the faces that we put on to communicate. And hopefully our words match the look on our face. If you're happy, you should show it, right? It's a song we used to sing, right? Yeah, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. But even smiling would be a good idea. Well, we're kind of those upper Midwestern Scandinavians. We're not necessarily really good at that. We can be pretty stoic. But what is it in your face that helps people know your great love for Jesus? That's kind of the thought for tonight. As we face the cross, as we make our way with Jesus to the cross, but tonight facing one another. Sometimes, it's just the look, that grumpiness, that kind of just puts a wet blanket on everything fun. You have those people in your life. And hopefully you're not necessarily responsible for those same wet blanket feelings all the time. But whether or not we like it, the reality is our facial expressions when we are interacting with one another can have a great deal to do with how the conversation is going to play out, how it's going to go. I don't know if you deal with too many people who try to text and talk at the same time. Or, we put phones down. That's the big thing when we're out and about, is to put our phones away and to not be distracted by that. But I'm talking about our conversations with one another. How you interact, how you are received, but also how the message is going to be received from that person. There might be some kind of grin and bear it. There might be that very good, well-practiced, stoic response that says on the outside, I'm calm, cool, and collected, while on the inside you're saying, oh no, oh no, or whatever you might need to say. But if we just smile and we look pleasant through awkward and difficult times with each other, sometimes we can really just get to the end. One of the phrases athletes will talk about is fake it till you make it. We would hear that in gymnastics a lot. You got to smile even though you just screwed up that whole floor routine. I watched one of our young competitors do. I knew, because I knew her for several years, that she was making up that floor routine as she was going. But she did a pretty good job because she faked it enough so people could see that. But the importance of being receptive people as well as people of grace, we know that either being receptive, the outcome is going to be a lot more pleasant than if you are listening like this. Well, you can cross your arms now because it doesn't really bother me. But if we were talking one-on-one and I finally went like this, the conversation tends to end quickly unless I'm just really that cold. And then, I really work hard to make sure that my body language doesn't tell people either I'm not listening anymore or I'm terribly bored. That's just important stuff for us to think about. And we can think about it in terms of all of our lessons for tonight, the readings that I shared with you. That Old Testament lesson about Moses and his shining face. Can you imagine? Well, Moses was not necessarily the most outgoing person, so the fact that his face was glowing was probably a little unnerving for him. But Moses' face is shining with the glory of God reminds us that we too, we live the glory of God. And hopefully it's shining from our faces so that people can see it each day. That's a challenging thing because there's some days when it's a good thing I need to drive all the way in because I'm not necessarily even shining by the time I get here. But you can't help but to be happy when you're with happy people also. At least it's ideal to think that we know that we live in that glory of God. But we all know that our faces often reflect the fact that we are in bondage to sin and cannot free ourselves. We know people who are simply angry people who kind of, we tend to duck when they come. Our faces can say to people, go away, I don't want to see you, or turn around. And for those walls we have put up between us and others, we have to let go of that. Or we have to own it and figure out really what's going on. Because we need God to be the center of our life. And God is about glory and forgiveness and patience and all those wonderful things. So the good news is that faces have the ability to change expressions quickly. And God can change us. I mean, how long does it take to be looking at a little baby when they're smiling at you with that giddy look? And if you need help finding those places that are fun, I have some good websites with really goofy pictures, so I can always find something to laugh at. Or even just basically practicing the whole idea of joy, living with joy and trusting our joy with other people. we see the reality of the change and the power of the change of our attitude in the cross. The people were shaking their heads and looking at the ground while Jesus was hanging on the cross. But Jesus, in that very powerful couple verses that I read from John, told his beloved disciple John and his mother to look at each other. And at that point, in that conversation, in those words, Mary was able to know that her son Jesus, her Messiah, her Lord, had commended her care to John, and John took Mary on as his mother. That important understanding of that relationship, the last piece of the puzzle, was finally now in place. Jesus had made sure that the relationship between his two closest loved ones, the two most important people there on earth, was now secured. That's important for us. And I think that's the piece that we have tonight in this. The same, Jesus wants the same for our relationships. The people that we encounter daily, the people who live in our community of faith, in our families, he wants the relationships with one another to be secure in him. He wants us to reach out in love to one another, just as he stretched out his arms and commended Mary to John's care. He wants us to bear the burdens of one another, just as he bore the weight of the cross for us. Jesus also from the cross said, "Lord, forgive them." That's the other part. We too need to forgive. Nothing worse than carrying a whole bunch of baggage of not being able to forgive other people. That's a horrible burden. Forgiveness and restoration relationships are not necessarily one, or they are not the same thing. But forgiveness empowers you to let go and to see them as God's child. We've all had those difficult people in our lives. We all do. Hopefully you're not overwhelmed by the number of difficult people, but there are difficult people. And when I've been challenged with those difficult people in my life, I have committed myself to daily praying for them, because it's hard to be mad at someone you've prayed for. Not so much that God changes them, but that I see them as God's child, and that I too can embrace that forgiveness, knowing that God has forgiven me and empowers me and challenges me and calls me to forgive others. That's the peace. That the forgiveness I am able to give to someone else. And I think about that, and I think about a significant one in my life over the years. Makes it a lot more possible to encounter this person. Not that we're ever going to be great friends, but that we can share space, we can breathe together, we could share communion together, because we both are God's children. That's what we're called to be. We are oftentimes just trapped by those things that make it hard to forgive. We want to hang on, and we want to be right. We want to prove the other person wrong, and we're going to let them pay for it, either by our silence or our sneers or whatever. Snarky is the latest word of the day. We were talking about the snarky Jesus today. We didn't talk very much about that, but we were going to write a kid's book about it. We probably won't, but we thought about it. But how do people who you know that God dwells in you, that you live as a child of God, that you live with the sign of the cross on your forehead, maybe only in ashes on Ash Wednesday, but always as God's child through baptism? It means living differently. It means grabbing onto Paul's words. I brought my message because this passage from Colossians is, again, one of my favorites. You've heard me use it often, but here it goes again from the message, Colossians 3. So chosen by God for a new life of love, dressed in the wardrobe God picked out for you. Compassion, kindness, humility, quiet strength, discipline. Be even-tempered, content with second place, quick to forgive an offense. Forgive as quickly and as completely as the Master forgave you. And regardless of what else you put on, wear love. It's your basic all-purpose garment. Never be without it. Let the peace of Christ keep you in tune with each other, in step with each other. None of this going off and doing your own thing. And cultivate thankfulness. Let the word of Christ, the message, have the run of the house. Give it plenty of room in your lives. Instruct and direct one another using good common sense. And sing. Sing your hearts out to God. Let every detail in your lives, words, actions, whatever, be done in the name of the Master, Jesus. Thanking God the Father every step of the way. We can, because we are God's children. We can let go of the stuff, the weight that clings so closely, and we can, as we face one another, share that love and forgiveness, that patience and that compassion, and all that God has called us to do. Amen. We sing